Hello, welcome to Harbor Rock Wealth Management's Planning Tip of the Week. My name is Ruben Smith. This week, I am lucky to be joined by my good friend and partner, Jimmy Luster, as he's going to help me navigate through what we call the 5 keys to long-term investing. So welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you. I kept hearing about these planning tips and all the fanfare they're getting, and I actually caught a couple. And thanks for having me
You
be a part
actually
of one.
watch them then.
I
so-
am watching them. Thank you.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So we were talking about this topic, and you had shared with me your story as far as what it meant to start investing, especially at a young age. So I was hoping you could share a little bit of that with us.
Sure, I'll be brief. Yeah, so I remember I had never heard of a 401k, or I wasn't invested. I was done playing baseball in my competitive fashion, and remember moved back to town, had to get a job. It was at Lowe's Home Improvement in my early 20s, and amongst many things to do on the onboarding process of getting hired, one of them was to pop in the 5-minute video. Here's how to invest in your future. And the HR rep at that time said, just participate, and when you retire, you will have lots of money. It'll all work out.
Right.
I said, okay, and I did. Didn't really know why, didn't know any fundamentals around it. I just knew that a little bit was coming out of my paycheck every time this was happening. So it wasn't until many years later that I worked at my first bank job, and it was recommended to me that, hey, look, you need to at least participate in whatever 100% match your employer is going to do.
Yeah, get all that free money back from
Yeah, I said,
the employer.
well, gosh, I must have been leaving a lot of money on the table before, and it all made sense. That made sense to me, so I did, and just kept it at, I think, 5%.
Sure.
I think that's pretty standard. And then I remember coming over to my next bank position, and many years later, I think when it was more of when we were working together,
Okay.
and because I was on the bank side, and it was more of working with our investment clients and the planning scenarios. And I think it was actually you who recommended. We got on the discussion. You're like, well, how much are you putting in? And I told you, and you said, well, I think you need to start incrementally bringing that contribution up a little bit, because just little bits won't really affect your cash flow that much. But what it will do is make a huge impact incrementally over time when it is time to start taking that benefit. So, that made a lot of sense to me, and I did. So, it does take practice to follow what is going on there and actually see the benefit of it. But you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So getting educated as to what things are going to help you reach your goal eventually, they don't have to be massive things to make big impacts later. So.
Right. Well, that's a good segue into the first one. So it's regular contribution. So whether it's in a 401k plan, or if it's in maybe your own Roth IRA or an individual investment that you're doing, it's not necessarily about how much you can put in the beginning. I think if we were to wait until we had saved enough money to where we felt it was an adequate starting point, I think a lot of us would never get to the point of actually investing, just because life happens. So it's not about how much you can put in. It's just being involved in a program or having the discipline to have a regular contribution over time.
Well, and for me, yeah, that makes sense. For me, especially when you're at that young age, when you're in your early 20s, or maybe a lot of people that graduate from college and now they're in a position to, okay, now it's time to start thinking about your future. You're not thinking about that. You're thinking about where you're going out on Saturday night, and paying the couple bills that you have. It's just not something that renesates.
No, retirement's lifetimes away.
Sure.
And literally it's like 3 lifetimes away
That's
if you're 20 years old.
That's right.
Okay. And then the next component of finding success in long-term investing is making sure that you're going to be diversified. So this would be not necessarily going out and putting all your money in one stock or all your eggs in one basket. There's been a lot of stories of late over the last several years of people going out and buying Bitcoin or maybe one of the FANG stocks and having some success. But really, you can't count on any one company or any the performance of any one fund. You really should be broadly diversified based off of your underlying comfort level. So you may still have a growth mindset, or maybe your risk tolerance is a little bit higher. So you can be more aggressive Or on the flip side, you can also be fully diversified in a conservative portfolio too. But it minimizes the risk and creates a much smoother experience when you're diversified.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And then the third component is time. So you got to let markets work themselves out. I've mentioned this on prior episodes where everything's so instantaneous. Markets will be efficient long term. I mean, that's something that we can rely on pretty safely. And as long as we're keeping our head down and not getting caught up in the noise of what's out there, especially with longer term accounts, that's where you're going to find.
Well,
some
what do
success.
you always say? Time in the market, not timing the market.
Exactly.
I mean that holds true right there. That concept.
Yeah, we've had a lot of clients or discussions with people that have had maybe too much cash on the sidelines of late, and when we bring it to their attention that it might be a good entry point, there's still something else that might
hold them back. Or,
be getting in their way. Exactly.
Yeah,
If it's truly a long-term asset, or you have a long time until you're actually going to need the asset, you're better off just looking the other way.
Sure.
And then getting back to contributions, and similar to what we had talked about, is increasing your contributions over time as well. So it's one thing to start at, say, 5%, okay?
Right.
But every time that you got a pay raise, a merit increase, or you found that perhaps you had a little extra money at the end of the month, that's probably a good indication of when you're ready to start.
So that's like a simple money in, money out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I being with my background being in 401ks and employer-sponsored plans, it was always whenever you get a pay raise, you deserve that. You work hard for your pay raise, but maybe carve some of that off for your 401k or your long-term retirement plan as well.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. Good tip. Yeah.
So increasing your contributions over time, and then the fifth component is periodic reviews. You want to have some ongoing monitoring of the account of the portfolio to make sure that it's not imbalanced. As markets shift, you can become out of balance. For instance, this year we've had a big run in tech, and specifically just a handful of companies, 7 companies have done really well. And if you were overweight to technology, well, now you're even more overweight when you're looking at the overall portfolio because of the outperformance there. So periodically, this isn't something you need to, I would think, need to do on a monthly basis or even quarterly for longer term accounts.
Especially like a retirement plan or something like that.
Yeah, as long as you're doing it once a year, I think it's fine. A lot of our clients, we have quarterly review meetings, but that's because that entails everything going on in their financial life, not just one specific account.
Great.
So to recap it, it's going to be regular contributions over time. You're going to want to make sure you're diversified. You have time on your side, so use it. So don't get caught up in what's going on in the noise. Increasing your contributions, and then periodic monitoring or reviews.
Great. Yeah. Wow. I did learn a lot on this planning tip. I did. We do have a background in it, and I do understand it to a certain degree. Of course, I do participate, but it's always good to hear from the advisor again, refreshing you on some good tips for your future.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, thanks for joining me this time. It does get a little lonely in here when it's just me behind the mic and the camera.
Glad to be here. Have me back again.
Very good. Well, if you have any questions on any of these specific topics or have any ideas for future topics, please feel free to reach out, and we'll see you next week.